Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So, the body of Edgar Lungu, former president of Zambia, has become the most famous non-resident in South Africa right now. Not because of state honors, not because of a monumental legacy, but because it's been lying in a funeral parlor fridge like a frozen political football, while his family and the Zambian government wrestle over who gets the final say on where his bones should rest. Imagine that. A man who once commanded a whole nation, reduced to an ice-cold court exhibit, guarded not by soldiers but by undertakers with invoices. Welcome to African politics, where even in death the drama never ends. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Zimwaves TV, and if you are new here, please do us a favor by subscribing to our channel. Two Mountains Burial Services, the South African funeral parlor holding Lungu's body, has now raised its hand and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a museum piece, it's a corpse." They wrote a polite but loaded letter to both the Zambian government and the family, reminding them that the embalming is not an eternal solution. Sure, it slows down the inevitable, but let's not pretend it's some kind of divine preservation chamber. Time, biology, and gravity have a way of winning in the end. And the palace warning is clear. If you keep playing politics while the body sits here, deterioration will come knocking, and the embarrassment will be catastrophic. Think about it. They even threatened to consult a pathologist or embalmer for expert advice, which is parlor code for "don't blame us if this goes south." They are asking who is going to cover the cost of the extended freezer party, because let's be real, electricity in South Africa isn't cheap, and neither is shelf space for a former head of state. But apparently, both the family and the government are so wrapped up in their tug-of-war that they have forgotten basic funeral economics. The longer you delay, the higher the bill, and no politician wants to be seen haggling over morgue fees. Now, the family insisted that Lungu must be buried in South Africa, where he died on June 5, 2025. The Zambian government insists he must be brought back for a state funeral in Saga. And in the middle, we have this funeral parlor stuck holding the bag, or rather the body, while the courts bounce the case like a tennis ball. The South African High Court said one thing, the family appealed, then brought in a superstar lawyer, advocate Tembeka Ncukaitobi, and suddenly the Constitutional Court is the new battlefront. But here's the kicker. This is less about where Lungu is buried and more about what his burial means. Because in Zambia, funerals are not just funerals. They are political events, symbolic acts, power plays wrapped in ritual. To bury Lungu in South Africa is to say, here lies a man estranged from his own soil, a leader so controversial that his final rest couldn't be agreed upon. To bury him in Zambia is to stamp his legacy into the ground, literally, as part of the national story. So, what are we witnessing here? Not just a burial dispute, but a battle over history itself. Meanwhile, Two Mountains Burial Services is screaming, "Hello, we have an actual corpse in our care, not a debate trophy." They assure us that the body is well preserved with no visible signs of decay yet. But embalming has limits. The longer this drags on, the greater the risk that when the family finally says, "Okay, let's see him," they might find the man less presidential and more, let's just say, unfit for an open casket farewell. That's the horror the parlor is trying to save everyone from. A PR disaster that would scar his legacy forever. And here is where the iron bites. Lungu in life was criticized for his authoritarian streak, for silencing dissent, for running Zambia like his personal vineyard. He was often accused of holding the nation hostage. Now in death, it's his body holding everyone hostage. Politicians are maneuvering, lawyers are cashing in, and the funeral parlour is calculating storage fees. Even in his absence, Lungu remains the most divisive figure in the room. Before we go further, we have an announcement. If you are interested in Zambian stories, NetBrowse Media has opened another channel called the Zambian Files. The link is below. Please subscribe to the channel for not only international Zambian news but also local Zambian news. Back to our story. Ladies and gentlemen, let's not ignore the superstition factor. In parts of Africa where the spiritual and the political overlap, where funerals are seen not as goodbyes but as cosmic statements, Lungu's burial location is not just about geography. It's about luck, legacy, and legitimacy. Some in South Africa matter that burying him there will bring misfortune. Some Zambians whisper that leaving him abroad is an insult to the ancestors. And while these voices clash, the corpse continues to collect fridge mileage. Now, picture this. Every day that passes, journalists gather, lawyers scheme, politicians posture, and in some refrigerated backroom of Pretoria, Lungu lies still, surrounded by humming compressors and stainless steel. It's the perfect metaphor for African leadership. Frozen, undecided, expensive, and ultimately waiting for someone with real authority to make a decision. Thank God, Zambia in the end got a democratic president. So here's the bottom line. This saga has gone from tragic to absurd. The funeral's parlour warning is not just about science, but about dignity. A nation risks being remembered not for how it honored its former leader, but for how it squabbled over his corpse until the undertakers had to step in. And when history looks back, what will it see? A man who once ruled Zambia, reduced to a pawn in a tug-of-war between a family clinging to pride, a government clinging to authority, and a funeral home clinging to protocol. And let's not forget, funerals are supposed to unite, to close a chapter. Instead, this one has become the opening scene of an even longer drama. Because the longer this fight drags, the more it exposes Zambia's political fault lines, the more it shows that even in death, power is never truly buried. So while Lungu's body remains in cold storage, Zambia's politics remain hot and unsettled, and the world watches, half in horror, half in disbelief, at a story that is somehow both Shakespearean and slapstick. Ladies and gentlemen, do you believe this is about honoring Lungu or about political symbolism? Comment below, honor if you think it's about respect, or politics if you think it's just a cynical game. Because, make no mistake, this is not just about where a man is laid to rest. It is about who gets to write the final chapter of his story. And right now, the only people winning are the lawyers and the undertakers. So here we are, 3 months since June 5, with no closure, no final resting place, just more appeals, adjournments, and endless debates. And while the politicians argue, the body waits, silent, still. A chilling reminder that even the powerful cannot escape decay unless the living finally decide to bury the dead. And until they do, Edgar Lungu remains what he always was, a symbol of unresolved conflict, a man whose presence, even in death, refuses to be ignored. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Zimwaves TV, where politics doesn't just stink, it sometimes literally rots. Subscribe now because, trust me, You don't want to miss how this story unravels. And as I said, if you are interested in local Zambian news, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel called the Zambian Files. The link is in the comments below.